Hey everybody, Flip with Kelly coming at you today. How y'all doing today? So today I wanted to go over how to do a land contract with you, and it's quite a bit simpler than most people think. Very similar to a subject to, which subject to is just subject to the existing mortgage. You want to do a deal, land contract's very similar. I actually did a land contract on our house here about 10 years ago. So we found that deal by putting some banded signs out. We put about 25 banded signs out every week. Took them back down. Put them up. Took them down. 25 a week, and then I think it got to be fall, and we just put them up and didn't take them back down because they were no longer mowing grass. So we just got a little lazy and thought we'll just leave them sit out. The owner of the house here, his mom happened to be driving on the other side of town. They saw our banded sign, so don't always think you got to put the banded sign right in the area where you want to buy the house, because his mom seen it way on the other side of town, called us up, and she's like, oh yeah, my son, he might be interested in selling his house, so I'll give you his number. So we went over to the house because I immediately knew by taking tens, if not hundreds of phone calls, that according to the price point and the area, this could potentially be a pretty good deal. So went out there, took pictures and video, met the seller, and I think he wanted something like $55,000 or $60,000 for it. And I'm like, okay. Didn't know a thing about wholesaling. I told him we would find a buyer for him, and that was my only mistake on that deal. Was I told him somebody else was going to buy it, and at the time we were living in a mobile home and tried to market it. People were saying it was too high, so after a while I went back to him, not saying a word about dropping the price, and I'm like, we got no bites on this thing, and he's like, oh well, okay. He says, why don't we lower the price? So basically he negotiated against himself, and he lowered the price 2 or 3 times, and then he dipped down to $39,000, I think it was. And then I was kind of thinking in the back of my head, like, after he said 39, I'm like, he might want to go back up a little, because that was coming down quite a bit. I was just kind of thinking that. And sure enough, after about a week or two, when we're, talking down at the title company about closing on the property and stuff, he's like, well, I kind of think that 39 is kind of low. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, just want to call it an even 40. And he was okay with that. So that's where we ended up, was 40,000. We went to the title company, which also had an attorney in the same building, and he's done several of these land contracts before. So that would be the first thing I would suggest, is finding a real estate attorney, preferably one that's done a lot of these land contracts or subject tos, and the ones with the experience are the ones that should be able to do the best job. And it didn't cost hardly nothing. I'm gonna guess it might have been $300. So everybody thinks, oh, I got to know everything there is to it. No, the attorney will handle it. You just figure out the price with the seller, and then they'll do an amortization. They do all the numbers works. Now the way we did it was I think he might have been paying 5 or 5.5% at the bank. So we agreed to pay him, like, it was either the same interest rate or maybe just slightly above. We might have been paying him 6%. And we set it up, I believe, for 2 or 3 years for the land contract. And essentially, you kind of want to do it that way, I believe, because supposedly if it goes too much longer than that, like 4, 5, 6 years, from my understanding of it in my state, was that it could affect his credit bad in a negative way. So we did do a little fix up on the house. We put a new roof on, so we didn't do any down payment on the house. But we did agree to put a roof on the house in the summertime. It actually ended up being fall before we got to the roof. We put a new metal roof on the house, and making payments to the seller. Now, the other way you might be able to do it is to make the payment directly to the bank yourself. Again, there you might want to consult your attorney. But we paid the seller, and then the seller paid the bank. And some trust there, or maybe you could ask for some proof or verification that he's actually making that payment to the bank. Now, here's another big one that we could have gotten potentially some hot water was, and the attorney didn't even bring this up. Maybe it wouldn't have been a problem, but the homeowner had a contract with the bank, an agreement. I think they bought it under special circumstance of being like a first-time home buyers type of thing. And there's special things in the contract, like one of the things I believe he had agreed to with the bank under this loan, the mortgage, was that he was not able to sell it within 10 years. So luckily, though, he had owned it over 10 years. So we never had a problem with that. Now, the credit union actually was the bank that had the mortgage on this house. And after we had done the contract, it was maybe a year or two into it, the bank, or not the bank, but the, what do you call it? The underwriter, whoever has the actual loan, to where the credit union is just kind of a front or an in-house that takes care of it. But there's like another loaning institution that is behind the scenes. They sold that mortgage to another lending institution or bank or financial institution. So it was kind of interesting because the mortgage was sold while we were doing land contract type of thing. So now here's another thing too, was that the seller had a mortgage on the house for actually a larger amount than what we had agreed on. We had entered into a land contract with him. So he might have been at $48,000 that he owed on it, but we had a land contract for only $40,000. Not exact numbers, but pretty close. So I told him, I said, you're going to have to, Mr. Seller, you're going to have to bring $7,000-8,000 to the closing table when we refinance this into a traditional mortgage at the bank. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad you told me in advance. He says, now I know I've got to save up for that. And he did. And I asked the attorney, so what happens if you don't bring that $8,000 to closing? And the attorney says, well, you'll have to sue him. Luckily, we didn't have to sue him, do any of that type of stuff. He was responsible. He saved the money up. He had a good job. He brought the $7,000 or $8,000 to the closing table. We actually, when we got the traditional mortgage, after we put the roof on so we could be approved for a traditional mortgage, we put soffit and fascia on because it was getting chewed up by the squirrels, so we put all that in aluminum. So he brung that money to closing. We did a cash out refi. So altogether, we got a mortgage on the house. We stuck maybe $6,000. We did the work, a lot of the work ourselves and family. But I figured we had roughly $6,000 into it. After we entered into the land contract, we got $12,000 back when we went into that traditional mortgage. Cash out refi, it's called. There's some different terminology like loan to value, but your bank or your one that's going to put the mortgage on the house for you will let you know, like, if you did want to do a cash out refi, how much you could pull out of the equity of the house. Not that you want to do that, but that's what we chose to do back then. So then, you got a larger mortgage to pay off, though. So that's kind of the trade-off. If you don't like debt, you don't like leveraging, then don't do a cash out refi like we did. But that's what we did back then, and our mortgage could have been lower had we not done a cash out refi. But we did go into a traditional mortgage. I think it took us an extra year longer than what we thought. So maybe the land contract said 2 years, and it ended up being 3 years. And then I think interest rates or something, the payment changed on year 2 of the land contract, but the title company or the attorney should be able to calculate the amortization for you if payments change like that. So you stay, current with everything. And I just thought the title company just did a wonderful, excellent job with us. And yeah, we had a little pushback from the bank. They didn't do that calling it due on sale clause or whatever it is. But it was a little nervous there for a while, but never happened. And now we've got our mortgage paid down. Well, property values went way up, so I don't know if get a market crash coming up or something like that. Maybe the value go way back down again, but according to the value of the house, we probably roughly have it half paid off now. So that's pretty cool. And let's see, what else can I tell you about it? Yeah, the big mistake I made with the homeowner was telling him I was going to wholesale it. I was going to find a buyer. What I should have said, because we ended up buying it as our residence. And when I told him, because we lived in a trailer house and we were thinking about upgrading, couldn't find a buyer anyway. So I'm like, well, what the heck? Maybe we want to get into a house, so we'll just buy it. That set him back on his heels a little bit, because I didn't say that I was going to buy it. And he's like, wait a minute. He says, I thought you said somebody else was going to buy this. You're going to find a buyer. And I'm like, I know. We weren't thinking about it at first, and then we got thinking in the middle of it. But by that time, I had been talking and building a relationship and rapport with the seller for months and months and months. It might have been 4, 6, 8 months, however long it was. So I had built up some trust. But so if you ever think that it's even the slightest little possibility, try to think of that ahead of time. You can just say, me and my partners, just in case. If it's going to be, you might buy it yourself. So maybe you might buy it, or you might, double close, or whatever the case may be. So basically, you're entering into a purchase contract, and you have partners. So back then, I knew pretty much nothing about wholesaling. I never entered into a contract. I did everything wrong. But it's kind of funny looking back at it now, how you can do everything wrong and still have a very successful deal, or in this case, we bought her as our residence. Either way, we entered into a contract and we got her done, and now we got a fair amount of equity. So, yeah, it's great. And now we've wholesaled 6, going on our 7th property. We got an 8th one that's a maybe. And that's going to be happening in maybe a couple weeks on the one, and the other one might be 3 weeks if it goes through. But the other one's looking pretty good. So, okay, you guys, if you got any questions, check the link out below in case you want to get any mentoring in. And you guys have a great one. Peace out.